Hey, what's up, everybody? Cledus Judd back with another edition of Straight to the Point, a video podcast for Recovery Point of Huntington, Charleston, Bluefield, and Parkersburg. We got to make sure we get all those in. I can't believe I remembered all those. But, man, what a great week. I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time at the Huntington location with the residents, learning more and more about these people every day and their stories. And like I said, I have learned over the last month that my story is so elementary compared to some of the stories that I'm hearing. And but with that being said, I'm really thinking that, man, each time someone tells their story, there's somebody else out there that story resonates with. And that's our whole goal by doing these, is to have people share their story like the two gentlemen we have here. They'll share their story in hopes that somebody else will be out there going, you know what, man, if these guys can do it and come through the process, come through the program, then maybe I can too. So apologize for my tonsils. You can set your clock. We were talking just a minute ago. You can set your clock with allergy season. So if I run out and get water while they're talking, don't even pay me no attention. But, man, let's just get started. Want to say hello and good morning. Hey, buddy. How you doing? If you don't mind, take a look at the camera, introduce yourself, tell them your role at a Recovery Point. Now, both of you guys are from Bluefield, right?
Yes.
Bluefield. So they made the trek down for a couple hours, and, man, we really appreciate it. So you go ahead and get started first.
I'm Brandon Lafferty. I'm the former program director at Recovery Point Bluefield.
I'm Joshua Farmer. I'm the new program director at Recovery Point Bluefield.
So we're kind of found out yesterday we're kind of having a changing of the guard, so to speak. And I was asking you earlier, you've been at the program now for, what'd you say, about 4.5 years?
I've worked for the program for 4.5 years and was in the program for a year prior to that.
Well, let's start there if you don't mind. You got to understand, I just met these guys probably an hour or so ago, and you just don't run up to somebody and go, tell me your story. You just kind of want to get to know one another and what they feel comfortable with, and that's what I told you guys before we got started. But share a little bit of your story, man. As we went through the process and what got you to Recovery Point.
So I'm from Raleigh County, out in the country. I grew up on a farm, had a great family, had everything we needed, most of what we wanted. There was no problems there, but from a young age, I wasn't happy with me.
Gotcha.
I didn't like who I was. Whenever I reached middle school, I started seeking out means to evade that. I started with marijuana and drinking and progressed over the next 20 years through opiates and ended with methamphetamine and heroin and stuff like that, and caught some charges. My probation officer said, well, you can sit in jail until you can go to Recovery Point, and she saved my life. She got me in Recovery Point, and I showed up and I never left.
And there seems to be a theme a lot of times with most people, and this is probably 10 or 12 people that I've been able to interview, and some of the girls that we've had on in the past said that they came from a good childhood. There was no issues there. Maybe a stepdad or a stepmom threw into the loop or whatever, but as far as being violent and abused and that sort of thing, there wasn't. But most of the people that I've talked to said, like you said, around middle school, they wanted to start, fitting in a little bit more. They didn't know if they were in with the right crowd or whatever, and so they started with marijuana, started with drinking first, sneak a beer or two here and there. Next thing you know, it's marijuana. Next thing you know, then, it's off the wrong exit, off the interstate, right? How about you, buddy?
I'm going to throw a loop in your how it's went so far.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So, growing up, my mother raised 4 kids as a server. I had a stepfather that was abusive.
Gotcha.
Physically, verbally. I watched him be abusive to my mother. There was times that she would cake makeup on her face to cover the bruises before she would go to work, because she had to go to work to support our family. So I grew up for years watching that. When I was 12, 13 years old, me and my stepfather had an altercation. I saw him push her, and I guess it just had built up.
Finally had enough.
It had built up for so many years. I come running down the steps, and I hit him, and he fell across the coffee table onto the couch, and he picked up a 2x4 and chased me around the yard with it until the cops got there. At that point, I told my mom, I was like, it's either me or him. Either we find our own place or I'll find somewhere to go.
Right.
And she did. We got our own place, but little did I know that was going to make it that much harder on my mom to be able to provide for our family.
Sure.
So go through school, things are better because he's not around. I make good grades in school. I played sports, captain of the football team, all that. I smoked pot and drank every now and then, but nothing out of the way.
Gotcha.
When I was 19, my father passed away, and I was living at his house at the time. I was enrolled in college, and it was just me and him there, and I woke up that morning to my grandma from Delaware calling me, asking if I had talked to him. And I said, well, he drank the night before, he's probably still asleep. And I walked into the living room and saw him laying on the floor in the same spot he was the night before. And it had snowed, about a foot of snow outside, and I jumped down crying, trying to do CPR, call 911, call my mom. It was just a real hard time. And at the time, I had never experimented with anything other than marijuana and alcohol.
At that time, you had it kind of
right
under control.
So I called a friend of mine, went, and we were, smoking pot. Thought it might make me feel better, but it didn't. At that time, I just wanted the pain of being there, watching my dad, just be dead, and me finding him there.
Sure.
I wanted all that to go away, and I had one person that I knew at the time that, used Oxycontin, and he happened to call me when he heard my dad had passed away, and he said, I got something that'll make you feel better, and that's all I needed to hear. So I went. At the time, I had got money back from college and went through about $2,500, $3,000 in a matter of a couple of months, and the only thing I had left was the pain of my dad dying and an addiction that I didn't know how to get rid of.
God.
And from there, it just spiraled out of control. I was doing illegal things, breaking into houses, whatever.
Just to feed the addiction at that point?
Just to feed the addiction. And I ended up getting caught and going to jail. I was in and out of jail. I went to prison for a year, got out. The day I got out, I got high again.
Just hadn't reached that as they call that rock bottom quite yet, huh?
No, not yet. I knew I wanted to stop, and I knew I had the potential to do better in life, but the addiction was overriding everything.
Right.
So I went to a short-term treatment center, was in there for 68 days, completed it. At the time, my son's mother was pregnant with him, my 6-year-old, and I didn't get to be there when he was born. She didn't call me whenever she was in the hospital giving birth. And I had been out of treatment for about 2 or 3 weeks at that point, and I relapsed whenever she wouldn't let me be there. And she told me that if I came to the hospital and showed up, that she was going to get a restraining order on me and not let me be there. So I didn't get to sign a birth certificate, nothing. I relapsed, was out there for a little while, felt another screen at probation. They sent me back to jail. So this is how God works.
And he does work.
While I was in the short-term treatment center, the director before me, his wife worked there. And she could see that I wanted to change. And she could see that I was really trying. I just didn't know how at that point. Well, her and another guy that worked at the short-term facility put in a word to probation and the former director and got me into Recovery Point. And 4 days later, without me ever putting in a referral or anything, they showed up at court and caught me out of jail, and I went to Recovery Point. Been there ever since.
Clean and sober ever since.
Clean and sober ever since. January 6th of 2016.
Holy cow. See, and that's such a horrific story leading up to that. No child, teenager should ever have to go through what you went through, especially with the abuse and then finding your father. I mean, that's very traumatizing, I can imagine. But by the grace of God and somebody that's willing to surrender, I guess you could say, and go, okay, I've had enough. So how many years is that clean now?
6.
6 years. Man, kudos. Man, I'll take a little handshake on that. So you went, and now Josh, let's get back to you a little bit, man. What was rock bottom for you? When did it finally come to a head? I always say, and I don't know if this makes sense, but I don't know. The only rock bottom I know is 6 feet. That's about as rock bottom as you can get. And when it comes to drugs and abuse and substance abuse, you got about 2 options. You're either going to go to prison or you're going to die. One or the other. And nowadays, back when I was an addict, still an addict, but been clean almost 18 years, the drugs, not that this is kudos or anything, but the drugs weren't like they are now. If I would have done all the drugs now that I did back then, I'd be dead. Because now you don't know what you're getting. This stuff's killing, dropping people like flies left and right. And I've said this before in other video podcasts we've done. I've asked friends of mine, I said, if you know that's the case, that it's more than likely the most powerful stuff you can purchase or do or stick in your arm or whatever, why would you do it? And he said, that's what we're looking for. That's what we do. We want to push that envelope. We want to get so high to the brink of death. We don't always want to die, but we want to push that envelope till we get there. Do you find that's kind of the case too?
Absolutely. Like Brandon said with his story, straight A's, was good in sports and stuff, and that was kind of my experience too. I graduated with honors, I went to college, and things just started getting out of control, but I always managed to find some reason to pull it back and be dry. I was never sober, but,
Gotcha.
dry drunk.
Sure.
And, I had a daughter, got married, that lasted about a year. I'm blessed that my daughter's still in my life. We have a good relationship now.
Awesome.
She's almost 15. But I would find reasons to stop using, but then it was just a break. It was just time for me to build up some money so I could go back even worse. The 2 years before I came to Recovery Point, I was severely addicted to opiates, but I was basically homeless. I was not bringing in any kind of money or anything. I couldn't afford them. A buddy of mine showed me what methamphetamine was, and they taught me how to cook it. So then for 2 years, I was on couches or in abandoned trailers or wherever I could be, and I was just cooking this dope. And, whenever the cops knocked down the door the last time, I was exhausted. I tried every means that I could conceive to stop using because I knew I was the problem. Right. I knew that I couldn't stop, but I couldn't imagine anything better for myself. Whenever they knocked the door down the last time, I was the only answer I thought was death. Like I wasn't going to kill myself, but if it came, I was okay.
No big deal at that point.
Never been so relieved in my life as
Right.
when those cops would put handcuffs on me because I knew I was going to jail where there'd be 3 square meals. Didn't have to worry about nothing.
Right.
My daughter was taken care of because I couldn't do any of those things. That was rock bottom, and just complete and utter defeat. I knew that I was beaten.
I hear so many people, man, that sit in those chairs say that almost verbatim one thing that you just said. I was worn out.
Mm-hmm.
I was just tired, because, and I've told people before, there's a difference in chasing and running, and once you become clean and sober, the chase is much different because you're chasing dreams now. You're chasing fatherhood. You're chasing careers versus running from an addiction that will catch you. So Recovery Point got you. You did the program, the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah, I did. I showed up, scared to death. All these guys wanted to hug me, telling me they loved me, and only time anybody ever said anything like that to me was when they wanted something.
Right.
But like I said, I knew I didn't have an answer, so I was willing to try it because people like him, who were staff there at the time, everyone there was sober. They'd been through this program, and they were still sober, and they were happy because I didn't know what that was. I was there about a month. Our community engagement specialist needed to go to the courthouse to sit in on the court for someone to maybe possibly get them in to do a referral. I had to go to have something notarized. And what turned into her going to referral was, well, we got to wait. We're taking him back with us. And man, I got to talk to his family and tell him what the program was and be the first person he talked to because he had no idea what was coming. And at that moment, I knew that I wanted to work for Recovery Point. I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be of service. I wanted to be someone who made the call and said, hey, we got you in. We're giving you a shot. This is your opportunity to change your life. And I ran with it. I wanted that goal. I wasn't willing to leave. Whenever I finished up, I went to work at Taco Bell, working midnights, and then they put me on call with Recovery Point, and I filled in there where I could, and they gave me part-time and then a leadership role. Whenever he became director, I stepped into his role as community engagement. I was making those phone calls, and whenever I never dreamed that he would leave, because he was part of that program. He was the one who gave me a duration job in the program, and so I was actually making a career change to try to further my career and get back in school. And then out of nowhere, he got a job offer. I almost didn't apply for this position, but I wanted so bad to have the opportunity to follow in the footsteps of him and the director before him, the people that gave me a shot, to give other people a chance to, walk with Recovery Point into the future as it changes. We're about to have a new facility. I couldn't step away from that. So, I interviewed, and here we are. And man, it's I can see him getting emotional. This is a big deal for us. Like him leaving and me stepping in.
I can tell, and I'm gonna ask you something, Brandon. I'm gonna ask you something. If I can get it out, and we're grown men, don't pay us no attention. How does that make you feel when you got somebody like this gentleman right here, and I can see the compassion, and ain't nothing. It's very overwhelming, and it's a true emotion. How does that make you feel knowing that along your journey back in the day when you thought you never was going to make it, when you thought, man, this is it for me. I'm destined to be an addict the rest of my life. I don't have a future. To fast forward 6-7 years later, when you've got a gentleman like this going, without you, without a mentor like you, this gentleman probably wouldn't be able to run Recovery Point. How does that make you feel?
Overwhelmed. I mean, I honestly thought I'd never leave Recovery Point. But I've seen so many people's lives impacted going through Recovery Point, by staff members that work there, by alumni that come back and give back. And, I see, but I also have an opportunity to go somewhere else. I'm still working recovery and make that same impact somewhere else.
Absolutely.
But I also get to come back to Recovery Point and sponsor clients and bring stuff that people need to the facility, things that I can't do as a staff member that I can now do as an alumni of the program. I get to come back and go to Silver Chip on Thursdays and hold myself accountable for issues that I have. I don't have to just have that relationship with a sponsor and a support group. I can use Recovery Point as something different now instead of just my place of employment. But the impact, since I told everybody that I was leaving Recovery Point, just the amount of phone calls and the conversations I've had with people that say, if it wasn't for you, if you made a difference in my life, you did this, you did that, it's unexplainable. There's no words to say how I feel. Recovery Point knows that I love this place. And
I can tell.
Because if it wasn't for Recovery Point, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't get to be a father to my 2 kids that never have to see me high. I wouldn't get to be a husband. I wouldn't get to own a home. I wouldn't have a relationship with God. Because without that, nothing else is possible. Recovery Point put me on a path to tear down a wall between me and God that I had built a long time ago. And
pretty thick mortar in them bricks too,
absolutely.
Ain't it?
And I had the opportunity to show other people how to tear down that wall and find a relationship with God, or introduce them to God that they never even knew. So, I'm proud of him.
Oh,
he's,
to say the least.
Yeah. I knew that when I left, before he left, I knew when I left that he would be the one to take my job if I ever left. We always joked about it. You're either going to have to die or get high before I get your job.
Right, yeah.
It was always a joke. Yeah. But then he left, and then an opportunity presented itself to me, and, he had the opportunity to come back and step in and do exactly what we've been doing.
You said something just a minute ago, and then we'll wrap it up, but something that always resonates with me, and I'm sure it's always going to resonate with you too, Josh. Is one thing that stood out. What you said is when somebody says to you, "If it weren't for you," it's like if it weren't for him.
Right.
They talk about the big book and all that, and I'm learning that as I go. That there's a bigger book than the big book, and man, that's a very powerful and a testament to you as a human being. I sometimes I make a living talking, and I get a loss for words when I hear powerful testimony like that. And you've changed people's lives, and in the process, it's changed yours. I can tell. Do you find it? And then we're gonna wrap it up. Do you find that it helps? And I'll ask both of you the question before we go. Do you find that it's easier now to talk about it, share with it, in hopes that somebody else don't go down that path?
Any opportunity I get to share my story, I will. I don't care who it's in front of. I don't care if the governor wants to hear it, the president. It doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, it's my story. And if it gives somebody else hope to change their life, then why not share it? Like,
Absolutely.
That's not who I am now.
Right.
That's who I used to be.
Right.
I have plenty of people that'll tell you who I am now. Influential, powerful people that, I have relationships with that know who I am now professionally.
Right.
And personally. But who I was then, like, some of them, unless I told them wouldn't know who I was, they wouldn't believe it if I did tell them.
Oh, yeah.
But
some stories are so debilitating and devastating that people just,
right.
I mean, I've heard some of them. I heard last week, and y'all may know this story, I'll make it quick. I was over at Recovery Point doing some haircuts, for the guys one evening, if you happen to see it on the page. And it was so much more than haircuts. It was sharing. It was they were in their element. They were able to talk freely and converse. And one of the guys, I was cutting his hair, and he told me, and this will stay with me the rest of my life. He said, my mother, for my 11th birthday, gave me my first hit of heroin. And I usually have a comeback. I'm usually quick-witted, made my living, talking and using my humor and using humor to ease over a situation. What do you say?
Nothing funny about that one.
No, there's nothing you can say. He said, I have spent my whole life in prison. That guy never had a chance. He does now. And all I said was, that was then, this is now. And I said, I'm here, we're all here. I didn't even know what to say. Like you said, what you went through as a child, that guy never had a shot. That a mother, would give their own child, heroin for a birthday gift. And man, I pray extra hard for him that he pulls it out of there. Last question for you. We got a camera and we got people out there watching. You said you're an athlete in school.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you play?
Football, wrestling, tennis.
He still looks like he could take me and you both right now. I'm gonna tell you.
He's a Spartan racer now.
Oh, is he?
Oh,
yeah.
We don't want none of this action, I can tell you. But if you've got a 16-year-old guy out there, girl, athlete, got the world by the horns, thinking, college, the whole thing's, their life's ahead of them, what you gonna say to them?
And I'll tell them the same thing I told my daughter a year ago, that the most important person you can impress is yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, it doesn't matter what the rest of the world thinks about you, colleges, coaches, or anyone else. If you're not happy with you, none of that stuff means anything.
Right. There you go, people. Coming from somebody that's lived it. So, man, I can't say, every time I do these, I'm meeting new friends. And, man, bet you're going to be unbelievable because of people like that one right over there. Man, thank you so much. Don't know what else to say. Thank y'all so much. As we always say, man, if you don't get help at Recovery Point, make sure you get help somewhere. We're unbiased. We just want people to get well, get better, stay the course, stay the path. Don't be ashamed. That's one thing that keeps a lot of people, puts you in that 6 feet of dirt, is people ashamed to share their story and ashamed to ask somebody for help. So reach out, let us know what we can do for you. We appreciate everybody watching. We'll have another podcast, video podcast coming up next week as well. So thank y'all so much, guys. Y'all have a great day. Straight from the point. See you.